The number one most common mistake that I see people make is not playing around sightlines or angles that benefit their hero. For example, a hero like Paige has a projectile that is slow traveling, pierces, and so benefits specific types of angles. For example, you can play from the Veil and pierce multiple targets like this, and this could be particularly good if you want to push the wave, especially in lane, right? On top of that, it's really good to play around corners because it perfectly matches with the time that it takes between projectiles to shoot. As you can see here, I'm holding M1, and most of the projectiles are going through. If I'm playing a hero like Vindicta, then I definitely don't want to be in the Veil, and instead I want to make sure that I have a nice open sightline, and the reason for that is due to Vindicta's weapon fall off being larger than most other heroes in the game. So how do you determine which sightline and which types of angles you should be using? And one thing that you're going to want to look at is the fall off range right here. For example, for Vindicta, it's 20 meters to 64 meters, which is above average. If we look at a hero like Viper, it's the complete opposite. The fall off range is terrible, starting at 15 meters and going all the way to 33 meters. Another thing you'll want to consider is some special attributes of weapons. For example, shooting people around corners is very, very strong on Drifter because as long as any of your bullets hit, it counts as full damage. For example, if I want to shoot this Infernus and I'm standing around a corner and I just shoot the side of his body like this, I'm hitting for full damage. It's 20 damage per shot, whereas if I shoot him like this, it's the same. Similarly, Doorman and Paige pierce, Celeste bounces, so there's some guns with unique properties that might want to make you reconsider the way you're positioning yourself. The second thing is the type of abilities you have. For example, let's look at a hero like Apollo. Most of these abilities actually benefit from being out in the open because they also move you around, right? Meaning Apollo, a lot of the time, isn't going to want to play in a closed off area. However, he does still want to be fairly close, right? Because a lot of his abilities are not very long range, and so he's kind of like a mid-range hero, usually wants to play on top of them because your abilities all give you some sort of movement, which means that he really likes open spaces, and this is also supported by his weapon having a fall off range of 25 meters, meaning if you're further than 25 meters, you literally cannot do any damage. For anybody that plays Deadlock for long periods of time, or any other video game for that matter, you know how important it is to have a comfortable and ergonomic setup, and that's why I've partnered with FlexiSpot for this video to showcase their standing desk as well as their C7 Max chair. Now, previously I had an incredibly old and uncomfortable chair, and FlexiSpot partnered with me to send me a C7 Max, and honestly, it's been a blessing to use. The new chair, the C7 Max, has so many features that are incredible. One of my favorite features is just the armrest, how adjustable they are, so they can turn kind of like 360. The height can be adjusted fully as well. The headrest is fully adjustable. The backrest height can be adjustable as well. The lumbar support is designed differently from traditional ones, and so it only supports your lumbar region, and it basically adjusts to the amount of pressure that you put into it, so you don't even need to adjust it, and it just fits your body and your needs better than any other chair I've used in the past. When it comes to their standing desk, I'd never had a standing desk before, and so they sent me their E7 Pro standing desk, and honestly, I love it. My favorite part is just the fact that you can dial in your desk to be at the exact height that you want it, but it's so solid, so smooth. It goes up really quickly. I have a friend who has a much slower desk, and on top of that, it's extremely stable when it's at max height, allowing me to type comfortably and answer all your questions on Discord or whatever I'm doing. So it's been really incredible to use. Very, very smooth, extremely sturdy, and I've loved my experience with FlexiSpot so far. The E7 Pro also has a 440 pound load capacity, as well as is extremely stable. You can even put a drink on it, lift it, it'll lift it like nothing. I have two huge monitors, so that was a pretty important feature to me as well, and you can even put something like an aquarium on there and I wouldn't even be worried about it. FlexiSpot is having a massive 10th brand day and Memorial Day sale with up to 80% off. Now's the best time to upgrade your setup. They also have free orders. So if you want a standing desk, you can use my code YTE730 for $30 off. Or if you want a chair, you can also use my code C730 to get $30 off the C7. Now, of course, there is also some budget options. So you can get the C5 if you're more budget oriented for the chair. And if you're more budget oriented for the desk, there's the E7. There's plenty of options. Click the link in the description to learn more. Thank you to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. The second most common mistake that I see people make is not adjusting their positioning based on stamina. Let's say I'm playing Wraith and I'm on this bridge right here and I'm fighting someone, right? This position doesn't look that bad because I can get to cover with 2 stamina pretty easily, right? So a rule of thumb that you want to keep in mind is usually you want to be able to get the cover between 1 and 2 stamina. So if I'm on top of the bridge, it might seem like a very open spot, but if I'm smart about it, I might be able to get to the Veil here, which probably wouldn't be great as Wraith, or alternatively, right, I can make it to this cover here, go below. This is not exactly the best cover either, right? So it's quite an open area. In order to feel comfortable on this bridge, I need to either have a significant advantage or have plenty of stamina at my availability. If I have 3 stamina, someone goes on me, I can simply use my stamina, get away with without much problem. However, I see people all the time that will be in positions like this with 0 stamina, and then they'll get caught, and then there's no kind of like cover near them to help them. So always think about your escape path. Do you have enough stamina to get to the next set of cover? And if you don't, then maybe think twice before going in a large open area that doesn't have cover nearby if you're low on stamina. One thing that I see people mess up all the time as well, and is my third mistake that I see the most, is not using cover to recharge your cooldowns. So let's say I'm playing Wraith, I'm fighting this Infernus, and he's doing a lot of damage to me, and I try to make an escape here, and I use my TP, and my TP is on cooldown. Now, during this time, I definitely want to be evasive and try to find some sort of cover. If you can find like something to play around, that can help you a lot. For example, something like this, a wall. I'll stay behind the wall, wait a second, try to juke my opponent, and then by the time I've juked them, I'll have my TP up again, right? Certain heroes have longer cooldowns, but a mistake that I see so often is that people don't try to use cover to wait out their abilities. So cover is great to reset, gain your next set of resources, whether it be cooldowns, whether it be items, right? Especially if you have an item like Warp Zone or a low cooldown movement ability or anything that can allow you to stall a little bit more, you definitely should look to use cover. Now, this can look in a multitude of ways. For example, you can use veils. One common tip that I can give for juking around cover like this is that when the person goes through the veil, let's say that you're running away, right? And this person's chasing you, you go through the veil, you can stop right after going through the veil, let him chase you, and then go again this way, use stamina like this. And it looks really like confusing because the person will chase him through the veil and then you'll just get out of it right away. So these are the types of jukes that you can use, and then, you know, use cover, like juke around pillars like this in order to regain your cooldowns, and then you can quickly use your escape ability. And this is how you either do sick escapes or stall for your team to come, or then again, you know, you can stall for your cooldown and maybe you'll be able to turn the fight. This is something that might seem obvious, but a lot of people still don't do. Now, mistake number 4 is not taking into account items or abilities when you're positioning on specific heroes. Once again, Wraith is a great example because you're positioning on the map. For example, you might be able to go and push a walker or push a tower fairly freely because you're thinking, hey, so if someone goes on me, I can TP away. However, very often I don't see people thinking enough about who can catch them, right? So let's say you're playing Wraith against Silver. So if Silver uses Bola on you, she can actually catch you, right? It's like a slowing hex. So if she uses Bola on you, then you can't use your TP. On top of that, if someone uses slowing hex or silence wave or curse or any other item like that, you won't be able to TP. So what that means is that you should look at people's items and you should position accordingly. For example, let's say that she would have slowing hex. Then that means that if I want to make these aggressive pushes, I need to either keep in mind where the Silver is on the map and be like, okay, Silver isn't here, so I can't get slowing hexed, or I need to buy Dispel Magic before making those aggressive decisions, right? Similarly, if you're playing in the middle of a team fight and you know that they have tools to catch you, you need to make sure that they've either used those tools and keep a mental map of all of the available options that they have to catch you. So whether that be a Silver or a Moan Krill ult and all these things, and wait until they use it on other people. Now, I know that it's very tempting to, you know, go in first, use all of your abilities and just try to like dish out as much damage as possible, but you have to understand your role in the fight and you have to understand the threats that are available, right? And then itemize accordingly if you can, but if you can't, then you just have to make sure that you play a little bit more passive until those threats that are, you know, specifically threatening to you are used on other people, because I promise you, most people don't have item discipline. Mistake number 5 that I see all the time is people don't use high ground enough when it comes to just being on the map in general. Obviously here I'm Lash. High ground is very, very good on Lash, but it's good on a lot of heroes for multiple reasons. So the first thing is high ground gives you options, right? This game doesn't have fall damage. So if you're on high ground, you can always come down. There's a few heroes that don't like high ground as much as others, but generally speaking, it's going to be beneficial to most heroes. It gives you great sightlines. For example, from this position, I can see really far, right? I can see threats coming from very far away, and I can also get a good idea of how the fight is going. I'm not saying you should be on high ground all the time, but it's extremely beneficial. Another reason why it's strong is a lot of the time you can use third-person camera to kind of spot people below. For example, if I spawn a Lash kind of below here, I can spot him with third-person camera and he won't be able to spot me. Similarly, if I put him underneath the bridge right here, as you can see, I can't see the Lash up there. But if I go where the Lash is positioned right here, and then I crouch, I can spot the Lash fairly easily without being spotted myself. So abusing third-person camera, I think, could be, you know, positioning related. But don't forget that a lot of the time when you're you're on these high ground angles, people have no idea that you're there. They can't see you. You get much better visibility and you get better options, right? So if it's ever a stalemate and you see like a fight is about to happen, or you think there might be a fight, consider being on high ground just to get a better idea of what's about to happen. Now, of course, certain heroes don't like being on high ground as much. An example of this would be Abrams, because if I'm Abrams on high ground and I'm trying to catch someone with my charge, unless I have Phantom Strike, it's going to be hard to like get the drop on someone because it's going to take a long time to drop onto them, right? Something to keep in mind as well, for sure. But most people don't use high ground enough. You should use it more, make use of it. Now, moving on to mistake number 6. Trying to do too much that goes outside of what you're supposed to do. So an example, and this happens to me all the time, is let's say you're playing Kelvin, right? Kelvin generally is a bit more of a backline hero who will like to, stay in the back, use your spells, and then when you see like a teammate or something happening, you're going to go in and you're going to use your dome, right? And you might also play close before your dome. Regardless of how exactly you're playing Kelvin, everybody agrees that he's not going to be initiating unless he's catching someone with dome and a teammate. You might be frustrated at your team and decide, hey, I see someone on the side lane and I really want to get this pick on this lash right here and get really frustrated and just run at the lash super far ahead, overextend yourself because you get frustrated that your team isn't running at the player. So what's worse than your team doing the wrong play? You feeding because you're frustrated with your team positioning yourself wrong. So don't overcompensate by positioning yourself in a way that you think your team should be doing just because your team isn't doing it, right? Stick to what is good for your character. So if I'm playing Kelvin, I'm usually going to wait to see an opportunity to either use a good dome, or I'm going to position myself on high ground with Ice Path so that I can get a good view. And then once I have a good view, I can always drop down and use my dome. Another example of this would be I'm playing Wraith. And I don't have ult in this example, and I notice Lash is super overextended. I move forward really hard and I go on him. Unless I can melt him right away, a lot of the time this might actually put me out of position where somebody else on my team should be initiating that kill, right? So the more correct play would be, hey, to just play a little bit more passive, make sure that you're not overextending yourself in a position where you can easily get collapsed on, depending on your hero. Another example would be that, let's say your team is not doing enough DPS, right? Well, instead of like trying to play your hero properly, you're going to try to do like a ton of DPS. Now, I will say that is less of a thing in Deadlock because every hero can do a lot of damage, so that's less of a mistake. But, the TLDR is don't overcompensate the way that you're positioning yourself because you think your team should be doing something and they're not, okay? Accept the way that your team is playing and, position accordingly. Mistake number 7, and this one is huge. So you want to make sure before the fight that you understand your role in the fight. So for example, here, I picked an obvious one. I'm Sinclair, I'm playing against Dynamo. What's my role in the fight? Well, it's probably to try to steal Dynamo ult and go for big singularities, right? That's an obvious example. But why is this important? Well, you want to think about all of this because before the fight, Deadlock has a lot going on, right? You're going to be moving around. You're going to be using abilities, using your bunny, using your bolt, and you're not going to have time to think about, oh, who should I be targeting in this fight? Which abilities should I be stealing on Sinclair specifically? But on any hero during the fight, unless you're a pro player, and even if you are, right, it's going to be very difficult to think about everything on the spot, which means you need to preload the information into your brain so that when it comes to executing, all you have to do is just be like, oh yeah, I remember, I just have to go on this guy, use this ability on him, etc., etc. So here's a couple of examples, right? If you're Sinclair against Dynamo, well, you can simply play, wait, hide, look for the Dynamo, steal his ult, and go for a singularity. That's probably one of the most obvious examples. However, I want to go in game and show you one of my recent games so that I can explain to you how you can apply this in your own games more concretely. All right, so here's an in-game example. In this situation, I'm Victor, and if you look at my items, you can see I have a lot of anti-gun items. I have Suppressor, which slows their fire rate. I have Return Fire, which returns 65% of their damage. By the way, for those of you that didn't know, the damage return is before mitigation. So what that means is that even though I have a lot of bullet resistance, right, I have 38%, I'm probably returning just as much damage as they're dealing to me, because the damage that I'm returning is not the damage that I took, it's the damage that I would have taken if I didn't have any resistances, right? And it even works if you pop Metal Skin. So if I Return Fire and Metal Skin, if they shoot me, they just damage themselves and I don't take any damage. But yeah, I have Metal Skin, Return Fire, Warp Stone, which gives bullet resist, and then I have Suppressor. So a lot of like anti-gun items, right? If you notice, you look at the net worth, you see, hey, their Geist is by far their richest player, 39,000 souls. They have Rejuvenator, so we need to shut her down. Now, Mo and I are going for a very risky play here, which was, we noticed there was a lot of people on the other side of the map, so we're trying to turn in the urn. I have to ask myself, what is my role in this fight? And my role in this fight is to create space for the Mo. And in general in this game, and I'll show another example after, my role in this fight is to shut down their gun carry, which is Geist, but also Warden or Venator, depending on the situation. But Geist is the #1 priority given she has the most farm. So if we let this fight play out, you're going to see the moment I see Geist, which I see her right here, I'm just going to go on top of her, fight her, pop my return fire, pop my metal skin, right? And I'm not too concerned about my life because all I'm trying to do here is just create space so that my Mo and Krill can get the urn in. Unfortunately, we give her, you know, like a full life swap, but, you know, the principle is the same. I just focus guys, obviously, like, they kind of fumble, and the fight goes on. At this point, I'm like, all right, well, you know, we're kind of screwed. I'm pretty sure I should have died here, but I'll keep the clip going just so you guys see, like, somehow I don't really die. I don't know how that's possible. Even though I got immobilized twice by Graves, I still just kind of walk away. But that's just an example of how you want to have your game plan before the fight so you don't have to make these decisions. Once again, we've got another fight. So let's do the same analysis. In this situation, Geist is still the most farm, although it's not nearly as bad as it was before. We're once again playing for an urn, and I notice, okay, like, I'm the frontliner. My job is to make space. I've got Refresher, so I've got 3 lives. So I can afford to be very aggressive, and I want to create space. So if you look at how I position myself, I'm positioning myself between the enemies that want to do damage and my teammates, right? So I'm the first line of contact. Now, I'm going to rewind a little bit and show you guys from a bird's eye view. But if I look here from a bird's eye view, right, you can see my team is like coming this way. I'm going to slow it down here so that we can see. I'm super far forward because I want people to use abilities on me. As my team is getting the space here, I'm putting myself here. But you can also notice that it's not like I'm out in the open, right? I'm still applying some of the other principles that we talked about. I'm playing around corners. I'm playing tight angles that are going to benefit Victor because I'm a very close range type heroes with some of my abilities. I'm always close to cover, especially if I don't have a lot of stamina. And, you know, I'm gonna use corners to like recharge my abilities and, you know, veils and all of that stuff. But I'm putting myself essentially as a wall between the objective and my team. So here, guys goes forward. I'm just on top of her because I don't want her to be able to walk forward and do anything. So we're gonna go back to my POV. I'm just fighting the guys here, and I'm taking a ton of damage. I'm not winning the trade against the guys here, like, at all. However, I'm accomplishing my job of keeping her out of the fight. I got rescue beamed by my support here. I actually didn't really feel like I needed the rescue beam. I'll never say no to healing, of course, but I kind of like was happy with the position that I was in. And now I notice my team is going forward. So once again, what am I gonna do? Warpstone forward, try to tank as much damage as possible, and just really be in their face. Even though I'm tanking a lash ult here, I don't really mind because, like I said, this is my job and I'm just going to be like focusing the targets that I think are important. So this is where I had to make a decision, right? And this is why it's important to have your game plan in your mind beforehand. So here I had to make the decision between, do I keep shooting the guys or do I shoot the Warden, right? But based on my game plan is to create space for my team and shut down enemy gun carries. So based on that, I felt that my team would have a better chance of winning the fight if I just zone out the Warden and then afterwards come back to clean it up. I didn't think I was going to be able to kill the Geist in time anyway, and she was going to get swap off. So my decision here, I believe I make the decision to chase the Warden, if I remember correctly. And so I'm just chasing the Warden, and I'm just seeing, okay, can I kill this guy? As you can see, I'm taking a lot of damage, so I'm not really killing him, and I'm kind of losing this fight. However, if you look at my team's POV, this Venator is now completely out of position, completely isolated, and I've got my second life, so I don't really care, and I'm just gonna keep going because in my mind, I'm like, I just gotta shut these guys down, prevent them from doing damage to my team, and my team's gonna be able to clean up any stragglers. And that's exactly what happens, right? So that's why the last mistake is really just having a game plan when you go into these fights so that you know what to do. Now, I could do a lot of examples with a lot of different heroes, but I'm gonna keep that type of content for the Academy. I do have a much longer video where we talked about positioning, which I just made yesterday. We had an hour-long lesson on positioning, sightlines, angles, and all that stuff. So check out the Academy if you're interested. If you're not interested, obviously no big deal. But those were the 7 most common mistakes that I see people make when it comes to positioning. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. And if you did, well, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, whatever it is. And I will catch you soon in the next video.